And she mentioned, well, we've got this brand new iPad in a nice case. We've had it for 2 months. It's locked. There's no identification on it. We can't figure out code, so they proved it was theirs. Oh yes, I lost an iPad about this big, 9.7 inch screen, that's mine. No, they punched in their code, they proved it was their iPad, and they had a grin from ear to ear. And since then, we have a relationship now with Lost and Found, and when they get any electronic device, whether it's a smartphone or an iPad, if there's no identification on the phone, and they can't figure out how to get it back to the owner, they give it to us. We could do things like pull the SIM cards. We're a Rogers Level 1 authority because we also manage cell phones for the university, and we're able to find out who owns that SIM card. So there's a whole bunch of tricks up our sleeve that we can use to return and reunite lost iThingies and other gadgets with their owners. But this connection with the Lost and Found department, it only happened serendipitously because the manager of the Lost and Found department happened to attend one of our lunch and learns. So what have we learned? We've been running this for 2 years. We had our 2-year anniversary last May, or last couple of weeks ago. From the user's point of view, we found there's strong interest in this. We've been connecting more with staff than faculty, and we're not sure if it's because we're not using the right communication channels to get to faculty, and we want to explore how to connect with faculty as well. We're surprised. We started off thinking we would get people who had bought iPads on their own and brought them to work. We're actually connecting more with people who have got iPads from their employers. The registrar decided that this group of people would have iPads in order to do X, and they have them, and they go, now what? We're finding that the informal approach is well received. We often get attendees who I can't imagine ever would sign up for any sort of technology or computer course, from 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. It just wouldn't occur to them, and we're getting those sorts of folks who are responding to a lunch and learn type arrangement. We're finding that the existing PC skills aren't that transferable. You say, well, I know how to use a PC. I've been using it forever. And you get an iPad, either you get it yourself or it's given to you by your department, and they go like, where's the keyboard? Where's the mouse? Where's a list of files inside there? How do I even get files onto it? Where's the cursor keys? In fact, we get the whole subject of iPad connectivity can be daunting. If you're used to just using a desktop that's plugged into Ethernet at work, and you get an iPad, suddenly you have to deal with things like 3G versus Wi-Fi, 3G data plans. How do I know if I go over my 3G data plan? How do I print? Can you print? I didn't know you could print. Those sort of things come into it. And this comes up to user expectations are often very mismatched. Like some of our users expect it to be a PC, and they spend the next 3 weeks after they got an iPad trying to convert it into a laptop. So I have my iPad, now I need a case, now I need another case with a built-in keyboard, now I need to understand how to use the keyboard. What do you mean my iPad doesn't work because the keyboard's drained? I just charged my iPad. Oh, the keyboard has to be charged separately because it's a Bluetooth keyboard. And at this point, they would have been much better off if they had just got a small laptop. But their expectations were that this is a magic box, this iPad, and it'll solve all their problems. So there's a mismatch with expectations. And even those who have more realistic expectations are finding that iPad workflows are really in the early stages and nascent. They understand why they're getting an iPad. I need to be able to mark student papers all the time. So I need an iPad so I'm attending the league, I can mark student papers. But the idea of, okay, well, what format are the students submitting it in, Word or PDF? What does marking papers mean? Am I going to put in Word annotation, or am I going to convert it to PDF and write over it with ink? And how am I going to get it back to the students? Like, they haven't thought through the process, and it's challenging at times. And actually figuring out these workflows is some of the stuff we do, but it's still early days in getting the complete loop from getting the document, processing it, viewing it, editing it, and then getting it back to wherever you got it from. And we help people with things like, how do you get the iPad to connect to network share? So we're a PC-centric institution, so how do you get it to an SMB network drive? We help them with that. We talk to them about Dropbox. We talk to them about the difference between editing a PDF and editing the source file, shortcomings. If you edit the source file, it gets changed slightly. Maybe that's okay, maybe that's not okay. Talk about how do you convert the document to PDF, and there's different solutions to do that. One of the apps we're pushing at the moment is called Notability. If it receives a Word document and you want to mark it up, what it does is it sends the Word document over to Google Docs, gets Google Docs to image the document as a PDF and retrieve it. It takes about 3 seconds for about a 10-page document. It's really cool. And it's all done transparently. From the point of view of the institution, the learnings are a little bit cleaner. We found that this is a generator of goodwill. The sort of comments we get are, oh, I'm really amazed that the university is actually providing this level of support, or actually knows what an iPad is, or actually has people willing to talk to me about this device I bought last week at the insistence of my daughter who's in university, blah, blah, blah. It's seen as IT being proactive instead of reactive. And often the question we get is, would you do this for something else as well? Why aren't you doing this for all your services? Why don't you provide lunch and learning on this? Why don't you provide this for Androids? Why don't you provide this for smartphones? And so it's yes and more, please. There's a risk reduction facet here, which is whenever we're talking at the lunchtime learnings, we're always pushing passcodes. We find that unlike phones, iPads are predominantly unlocked. And when we unpack that, what we find is, because it's too damn irritating, I don't want to have to put in a passcode every time I close the cover and it auto-locks and I lift the cover and I have to put in a passcode. So we explain to them, yes, that would be very irritating, so why don't you do this, this, and this, and then what happens is, it won't prompt you for a passcode unless it's been locked for at least 15 minutes. Oh, I didn't know it could behave that way. Yes, it can. So we show them how to do that setting and get past that. When they leave our session, their iPad is locked now. If they leave it and someone finds it 15 minutes later, they can't get in. And that helps protect the university from whatever files they might have in their inbox, and it protects them from having any nastygrams sent from their inbox to their boss, but not by them. If someone found their device. We talked to them about backup. That used to be such a pain because people would get iPads, you had to plug it into a PC or a Mac or an iTunes. And so we would find people who had 2-year-old iPads that had never been updated because they'd never plugged them into a computer, and that was the only way to update them. And so these had also never been backed up either, so that if they dropped them or they were stolen, rather than being able to go to the Apple store and get a replacement or get it covered under warranty, which Apple will do, depending on whether it's the 1-year period and what the issues are, or longer if you've got their insurance, and then doing an instant restore, they had no restore from which to do that instantly from. So nowadays, with the iCloud service for backup, we show them how to set that up. Once it's set up, then they're backed up every time their iPad is plugged into a power source and it's on a Wi-Fi network without them doing anything. You can also force a backup in real time, but that's not the point. We just want it to happen magically in the background. And we usually enable the Find My Device feature of iCloud. Not so much so that they can notice that they can't find their iPad and they call it up on a Google map from any PC browser and see that their iPad's traveling down the 416. But from the point of view, maybe they just misplaced their iPad or their iPhone in their couch cushions or inside a hidden pocket in their handbag, and the Find My Device feature can allow them to ring it remotely. I use that a lot, and it doesn't matter if the device is muted or sleeping or whatever, it'll still ring. And then I can go, here it is. And then still going through learnings from an institutional perspective, we've talked about the serendipitous connections. We get to relate to customers in another opportunity to relate to customers, and that's rarely a bad thing. And for making connections and talking to them in a more informal environment than my computer just melted down and when are you going to fix it? And so those are our learnings. So is this a one-of, or is this applicable anywhere else? That's a good question. There certainly are some requirements. In order to do this kind of approach, you need some proponents who are enthusiastic. You need some subject matter experts. Sometimes it could be an enthusiastic person whose enthusiasm allows him or her to become a subject matter expert. We have that. We use WordPress heavily at our university, And some of our best WordPress experts didn't know anything about WordPress at the beginning, and it was just a virtuous cycle they were on. Their enthusiasm. Becomes radar visible, larger than a small crow, radar reflection zone. And so you need these factors. And underlying these factors are some assumptions. We assume that people want to bring this sort of technology to work from their own benefit, from their own resources, or ask that their management provide them with this technology because they perceive it will help them do their job better. So people are open, is our assumption, to using technology if they perceive a benefit. People want to do a good job in general, and if there's a way that they can do this job better, they'll go for it. A poster child example of this that was given to me by David Hudson, one of our PhD students at the Sprott Business School at Carleton, looking into mobile devices, was he was interviewing a fellow who did tech support, and he was on call for extended period, and the company procedure is when you get a call from the customer, you must drive from home to work, you must use the company's existing PCs to establish a VPN connection to the customer's network, and then you can debug it. Then you drive back. So even if it's just flip one switch, it's 2 or 3 hour call by the time you go in and come back. And he thought some of the calls he were getting he could handle if he had the right reference material. So he took a bunch of the company documentation, put it in a PDF file, and had it on his mobile device. And when he got the calls, he'd try to do some triaging over the phone and get the customer working. If he could get the customer working, the customer's happy because he was working faster. He billed his employer less for coming in for 3 hours. It seemed to be win-win. Then he refined the spreadsheet and put in some conditionals. Are the 3 lights on panel 14, green, green, and yellow? If so, go to step 14. Otherwise, go to step 17. And he had some conditionals there. Eventually, the word went up to the higher-ups about what was happening because he copied it to the other service engineers, and eventually it spread through the corporation. The higher-ups found out about it, and they institutionalized it. So it's another example like the flight manuals in the cockpit, where if we create an environment that fosters supporting people who are trying to do their job better, we can reap the benefits of this innovation in our organization. So that's an assumption we have. That's part of what drives us here. And implied is just what I said there, is we believe that IT's role encompasses helping people be productive with technology. And it doesn't have to be the technology that we pushed out. It could be other technology that comes in through other routes. So if you subscribe to these assumptions and if you can meet these requirements, this model might be worth exploring at your institution. So in summary, we believe people use this technology because they perceive it will help them in their workplace. They may be wrong. The example I gave of the person who tries to make an iPad into a laptop, when they'd be better off with a laptop. We believe that the traditional IT approach came from an era when IT was expensive, and you have to manage expensive things. You don't manage pencils, but you manage typewriters, you manage calculating machines. And it's not the only approach, and in fact, this approach comes with some negatives, which is there's a delay because you have to wait for the technology to stabilize. You don't want to hire a bunch of people and send them on training. Like, how many people jumped on the bandwagon in 2001 when Bill Gates said at Comdex, it's the year of the PC tablet, and with Windows XP on your PC tablet, the world will never be the same. Anyone? Okay, well, that was a good call on your part, because it turned out he was ahead of his time by 10 years. The year of the tablet didn't happen until 2010, April 3rd. So the thing with a lightweight approach is you can afford to make mistakes. The investment is quite small at this point. And if the iPad turns out to be more than a passing fad, we've set up a lot of learning that we can easily transfer to the traditional IT service desk and put in the mobile device management programs and things that we're rolling out, but they roll out 6-18 months later. They don't roll out right away. Right now, we're just generating goodwill because a lot of our customers are just amazed that we're on top of this stuff when it's relatively recent. The iTeam support model, as I just said, it is low cost. We think it's applicable to other technologies. We rolled it out for iPad. We're definitely looking at rolling it out for smartphones, other smartphones. And of course, it's not free. Nothing in life is free, and there's certain requirements. But we've had good results, and we're not afraid anymore. So that ends the formal part of the presentation. And I hope you appreciate it was relatively brief, as this is the last session between us and the casino. and I'd love to get your reaction. And if you have any questions, my colleagues Melissa and Charlotte are here to share their insights as well.
So what we'll do for the Q&A is we can alternate between questions in the room and questions coming in online. So let's throw it open to the room first. Or we'll go online first. Who gets invited and how do you advertise your lunch and learn sessions?
Okay. Okay, I'm not interpreting that as you want to answer that question?
No.
So what we do is we try to leverage the institution's infrastructure as much as possible. So we're not running stealth or black on this. So we have today in our case Carleton, we have a newsletter that pushes all the events that's happening for the week, that pushes out a couple times a week. So we get queued into that as an event announcement. We do word of mouth. We have business cards. And at our meetings, we pass out business cards, and we encourage people to share them with their colleagues. So we do a little bit of word of mouth. We don't have an affinity program yet, where you where you can pass it around and just pass it around, and the last person gets to keep it or whatever.
We also have them at the bookstore, so when people purchase their iPads, we encourage them to hand them out. And also purchasing. Some people go through payroll. Because actually they hand out the cards to let the employees know that there's some help on campus.
So we try to use the same channels you'd use if you were advertising a seminar or a guest speaker, that sort of thing. And I hope that answers the question.
And tweeting. And Kate tweets our sessions.
Right. So we're technical, so we push all the channels. And as I mentioned, we haven't found the right channel for faculty yet, and we're working on that. Yes.
So you have the question out there that people ask of you, why don't you do this for X? And you didn't really answer that. So if people are approaching you, how do you decide? Like, this is very iPad centric.
Right.
How do you decide what things you're going for?
So this is the iTeam, and our subject material is scoped out pretty much as you would. It's iPads and iPhones, anything that runs iOS. But if they say, why don't you do this for Android? Because I've asked many times, I say almost all the applications we cover are available for Androids. Please come and you'll find something useful. are you an enthusiast for Androids? Would you like to join our team? If not, do you know an enthusiast for Androids who'd like to join our team? And we're just dying to change the name to the AI team. So we try to, anything that comes across as anything but a no, anything but a go away, we try to make it like come anyways and you'll get something. And if you want to help us expand it, come join us. I think that the idea I have at the back of my mind is like we know how to, we have the communication channels established, we have the website established, we have the format of the Lunch and Learns established. If there's any way someone could take that as a franchise and use it for something else, we'd like to put a box around it and say, here. And if that involves them working with us for a while and it's the AI team, that's cool too.
Let's take another one from online. Is a Lunch and Learn done on a volunteer basis for the IT conducting it?
So it's not a stealth operation, so our boss doesn't know we're doing it. Sometimes we go to them for budget and try to keep it small. At our anniversary Lunch and Learn, we provided lunch. Well, popcorn, cookies, soft drinks. We provided snacks. So it's people are giving up their lunch hour, I guess. Now, for those people who cannot give up their lunch hour, before I linked around, I spent my lunch hour running. We recently gave an HR sanctioned course during working hours, and so people registered for those, through our HR course registration, and it was held from 10 to 11:30. And one of the things we put in that appeal was, if you can't come to lunch learning, because lunch is a scarce resource, there's only 5 a week, and there's a lot of things competing for it, like charity events and health events, and lectures and things like that. There's another way we can reach out to you through these employee-targeted HR courses. They're called Learning and Development at our institution. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of how the iPad has increased efficiency and productivity?
That's an excellent question. A lot of times, you do these things and you hope for good things, but how do you measure them? Quantitatively, we have the basic metrics about, we've had 24 sessions, we've had 300 attendees, we average 12 people per session. We have a stack of thank you notes. We actually publish them online with the names removed. So we have some quantitative measurements. Anecdotally, we have a lot of notes. We've come across people who've never upgraded iOS 4, even last month. So they never had iOS 5 or 6. So that can't be useful. We've had people who were reading their email by going to a browser and reading it through a webmail interface because they didn't realize the mail app could be used. So that's a productivity hit. We certainly have a lot of people show up without the iPad secured. They always leave with passcodes enabled. We've had people who used, we have a hotel-like Wi-Fi in addition to a normal Wi-Fi with a user ID and password, but the hotel, the captive portal Wi-Fi, where every time you try to get on Wi-Fi, you're taken to a website and you have to enter your credentials. We've had people using that on their iPad at campus, and they come to us and then we set them straight. So every time they open their iPad and they want to get on the Wi-Fi network, they'd be taken to a login portal and they put in their credentials, they close the cover, and then they open it and have to do that again. And they don't know that that's not an efficient way to do it. So we have a lot of anecdotal stories where people are using these in a very inefficient manner, and when they leave, we know that at least those 4 people aren't doing that anymore. Then we have the metrics on people attending it. But I would say that being able to quantify the benefits is a work in progress at this point. Does that answer your question? Or?
Kind of. All you're doing is solving problems they wouldn't have if they didn't have an iPad in the first place.
Oh, I see. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't getting at the heart of the question. I don't have an answer for you. I mean, I could say the same about your laptop.
Okay, thanks.
Another one from the folks online. Did you have to provide a business case for your seminar series, and if so, to whom did you have to justify it?
That's a good question, and the answer is no, and that was because of the evolution. So it didn't come to us fully imagined. We really just thought we were going to get together for lunch with a few people, and we were as surprised as anyone with the interest that it generated. So we didn't think it would get as far as it got. We never thought 2 years ago that we'd be giving an HR course, that the boss would pay for lunch for our 2-year anniversary.
Now we do a website.
That we have a website, that we'd be in the forensic return of gadgets. So we never imagined any of this at the beginning.
I'm just struck by and you just described that use case of somebody opening up and having to re-enter their credentials after court every time they open the cover on their iPad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of like, gee, that person's using their technology in a really dumb way.
Mm-hmm.
But I see that with people with their PCs all the time too, you know, they'll email a PDF to themselves so they can run it through the scanner and print it and then OCR it or something, you know, some crazy kind of thing and drop it in the cloud or something. So people use technology in all kinds of bad ways.
Yes.
You know, you're addressing the bad ways people using technology on iPads.
Yes.
But I sense that you have a hard time getting people together in a computer lab to try to address some of those issues around using technology around a regular desktop or something like that. So what's the magic thing here? Is it just that it's new, or you have an opportunity to zoom in there and fix things before people do crazy stuff?
I think your comment about the iPad having a fun component, which was implied in your question, is very salient. The CIO at Harvard described iPads that they were deploying to students as being fundamentally different in that they were a lean-back device. And you grab an iPad and you get in a chair and you lean back and you start consuming information, browsing information. Whereas you get to your PC or your laptop and it's a lean-forward device. And there's something about that I think that's worth exploring. It's engaging different parts of your brain. And I think the iPad is less intimidating. So we often find with senior executives, they may be better off with a laptop to talk to your point in terms of, you know, it has MS Office, it has the productivity tools, it's what their admin is using. But it's too intimidating. And it's like the iPad's a gateway drug into productivity apps. And so they get it first to read their mail, and then they can get to their calendar, and then they want to know how to do a presentation, how to present a presentation on it. Like just before this session, I was in my volunteer stint, and someone came up to me with an iPad and said, I'm on next. How do I get my presentation online? And I said, do you have it on the USB key? And he says, no. I said, you got the cables to plug your iPad into the VGA thing? He says, no. He says, but I do have it in an email. So the confidence and the faith that's behind that brazenly walking in 5 minutes before your presentation with an iPad encapsulates this idea that people have it. It's a magic box. They're not afraid. And so what we did is I said, well, mail it to me. And I had my laptop here and I put it on, received his email, put it on a key and gave it to my friend here and he was up in 5 minutes. But I don't know whether anyone would walk into a presentation with a laptop and be that confident. So there's something about the iPad and the form factor that's less intimidating and making people more susceptible to looking at the problem, which is really workflow and how to work intelligently. And someone described the iPad as, where's the user interface on an iPad? It's just a piece of glass, and the newer ones, the frame is disappearing. So the device disappears and you're just interfacing with the app itself. There's something going on there that allows you then to have a discussion about workflow. Okay, what do you want to do? I want to mark the students' papers. Okay, how do they get them to you? Well, they send them to the LMS or the email. And it seems that you can get to the conversation, the workflow conversation, almost easier. Whereas with a PC, I was in the PC room just reading my mail just down the hallway, and I just find it depressing. Row after row of these screens. I felt like, you know, someone in a Charlie Chaplin factory movie.
turns me on. Another question, I said too much again. Can we
Share less.
Yeah, right. Can we link to your iTeam site on our website?
Yes, absolutely, and there's a contact form there, so carleton.ca/iTeam, and there's a contact form there, and we'd be pleased to work with you on generating content. We normally do hiatus for lunchtime learning over the summer because the population of the university shrinks by about 2/3, and a lot of people use it as a time to work on other projects. We were thinking of seeing if we can turn any of our content into short movies, a little bit longer than maybe buying 3-second clips, but short movies, and see if we can use that as a way to push it out to more people than the dozen or so who come to our lunchtime learning. So we'd be happy to work with any institution that wants to explore this, and you're welcome to our content, and we'd be happy to collaborate with you. The handsome man in the second last row.
Since the iTeam stuff's pretty big now, at least, from what you first started off as, do you see, like, having it for students? Like, even if it was for, like, Brosh Week or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw people bringing them into work, and they needed to know how to get into VPNs and how to get to student banner systems and a whole bunch of work topics. There's no way you can go to a Genius Bar or buy a copy of iPad today and find out how to do that. It's very institutional specific. So we were originally thinking about solving staff problems. But to your question about workflow issues aren't the sole province of employees. I mean, students have the same workflow issues. So how do they take notes? How do they transcribe notes? Where do they file these notes? That sort of thing. And then faculty are interested in it because they want, if there's a way that they could put up content that's more amenable to how the students are equipped, they'd be interested in it too. And things like we did on the multiple projections, that is so cool because you can have students present their work in the classroom and the prof can say, team A did this, team B did that. You can double click on those images and they zoom in and then they zoom out again. So there's a lot of pedagogical implications there. So we would, we've changed all our wording